I'm really not liking this.
Sort of, if you spill that over.
That's what I'm saying. I really don't like that. Okay. And then what are we going to talk about with magic? Just kind of our thoughts and discussion. And
Yeah.
you can be like, let's talk about magic.
Yeah. We're going to do... Can you
we need some funny.
Are you ready? What are you doing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
When it just click play. No. Click start. What are we actually? How are we actually starting?
Well, we've been recording for about a minute now.
Have we? Cool.
Welcome, everybody, to Altacast number 4. So, as you can tell, Joel and I are not in our usual space. We're right there on that bridge.
I'm trying to fix my hair, sorry.
I thought you were pointing at the...
No, we're in San Francisco right now.
Yeah, so we're in... So, apologies for the delayed Altacast. And the fact that we have a different microphone. We're just using my laptop right now.
Yep.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about what the team is doing. It's kind of the end of the year. So we'll talk a bit about that and what that means. We're going to talk a bit about some future stuff. And then we're going to end with a Q&A like we normally do. The future topic today is going to be magic. We're going to talk about magic.
Yep.
So look forward to that. All right, so starting up with what everyone's doing. Joel, myself, and Tima are on a business trip right now, so we're not doing development work too much. We're doing a bit of design work.
Yeah, we'll be brainstorming quests and stuff. Some of the stuff that we talked about last. Yeah, we're doing our brainstorming after the video, but we're brainstorming quests and stuff, preparing for next year because that's going to be a big part of next year. And we've got a couple meetings with some big companies lined up. Not allowed to go into any detail.
Can't go into detail about that.
So, I can't say, I wouldn't say expect anything because most of it's business sort of related stuff rather than game related. But yeah, so that's cool. But we're also prepping for that. So it just means we don't have a lot of time for
game stuff.
For game development stuff.
Yeah. We're back at the office all the way in Australia. We've got Serena and Timo and Victor are still at work along with Gary. Serena's got a bit more cosmetic work to do. Obviously, this is the Christmas season. So she's kind of working on the next big outfit. I left a bit of work for Victor before we left on some slightly festive things, I guess. I don't know how
slightly. I've already given a teaser, a hidden teaser. No one knows. It's in the announcements channel. Now I just gave it away. But yeah. So we've got some cool features coming that should and
they're pretty small. They're kind of just there for the. Well, they're not going to be just there for the Christmas update, but they're kind of fitting for the Christmas update.
Yeah. They're permanent features, but it's kind of like the Phantoms during Halloween. It fits into that sort of theme, but it's still a permanent feature of the game.
It's not an NPC.
It's not a creature.
No, we didn't create a new creature. Just wanted to put that out there before we set the expectations of like every holiday season has a new creature. So Victor's working on that. I think people will have fun with it. And
better.
Yeah. When you go in the game, remember that we told you to have fun.
Timo.
God, yeah,
I don't know what Timo is doing.
No, I don't know what Timo's doing either. Timo was kind of helping us with some of the business stuff before we left. He's got a little bit more to do on that, maybe.
He's been doing lots of stats, lots of number crunching.
Yeah.
Working out how to do add and subtract.
Working out how to measure how much fun you guys have in the game is really it.
We settled upon 100% fun.
Yeah. I measure in the amount of reallys I say when I tell people
really
liking the game.
Yeah. Because every really is one digit in the percentage, and if there's 3, the only number it could be is 100%. So it's logical to me.
Yeah. But no, Timo's I don't know, it's hard to say. Timo kind of jumps between doing some server things to doing some stat things, analytics, that sort of thing. Anything to help us kind of pitch the game to people and grow the business out. So that's why you probably haven't seen anything from Timo in a while. And he's going to be doing that sort of thing for a fair amount of time, I think.
Also, every time we have server issues, you can guarantee that's like the next couple of days of Timo's life gone. So the fact that we had servers go down at some stage over the past week means that Timo's got to investigate what caused that, fix up those problems, and make sure they never happen again. Otherwise, he gets fired. So,
yeah. And Gary's continuing to work on his cosmetics as well.
Yeah.
His internship is coming along decently. Well, I mean, pretty well. He's making clothes for us and stuff like that, which is cool.
Actually getting released stuff.
Yeah.
That's good.
Seeing, like, I know as like a new developer, seeing your stuff go into a game is always kind of like...
Yeah. As a programmer, seeing my code go into a game, it's...
I mean, the fact that people wear his clothes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Is that everyone?
That is everyone. Because the 3 of us aren't doing anything, really.
Yep. Behind the scenes, Sol is also still learning some programming stuff. He started. He's working on a sort of puzzle-ish mechanic, but it's nothing. It's nothing that we're targeting to put in the game straight away at this stage. The goal is to more just learn stuff, and if it goes in, whenever it goes in, that's great. So from that perspective, obviously he's got a lot of other things to do, moderating people. Yeah,
I mean, I think I know there's a lot of math involved in what he's doing, and like vector math things.
It's difficult enough to learn Township Tale code without having to learn heaps of stuff all at once. Yeah.
I can barely do math, so I can't really help in that regard.
Do you remember I taught you the other day what 7 plus 4 was?
That's 11, right?
Yeah. See, he's learning.
I mean, if you tilt that symbol that way, that's when things start to get complicated for me. Yeah.
It's easy enough if you tilt the numbers as well. And then tilt your head.
Okay, so that pretty much wraps up what everyone's doing. It's pretty short and sweet. Usually towards the end of the year, we don't push out anything too major because we know that there's going to be a bit of a break where...
We don't want to break the game and then go on a break.
Yeah.
Because otherwise...
like, I know people last year mentioned that all 3 servers went down and then people can play for a while. We kind of want to avoid situations like that where this is fun. But, things have rebooted themselves fairly well, I think.
Well, now our servers actually do reboot. Last Christmas, they...
I think, didn't they?
No.
I think they did.
No, they worked off... They had a second application which occasionally crashed. And that second application would reboot them if the first game crashed.
Yeah, the first heartbeat.
But also I think there was a thing where somehow one of them made the other crash and then it just broke.
Isn't that great? Hopefully things will be more stable this Christmas. Yep. Okay. Let's talk about the meaty part of this. Let's talk about magic.
I really wish you had post-processing now.
Yeah.
We're on a laptop, so we don't have...
Yeah, you're going to see a super raw upload of this, so no editing. No, not even a...
Just imagine the rainbow.
Yeah. So, let's talk about magic. People are really looking forward to magic. It's a big component of the game, I think, that people want in terms of combat. I know we've talked a lot on Discord with people about, the different classes and types of magic, how it's going to work on an interaction level, how fun is that going to be. Those are all pretty difficult questions because it's so far away, the magic stuff.
This video might end up being fairly repetitive. Not repetitive, but like reiterating stuff you already know if you have been in the Discord for a while. Just because a lot of you haven't read it, and it's constantly something. We have the little FAQ of like magic, and it says something along the lines of, yes, we will have magic. Here we go. I'm going to see if I can find it.
Oh, the FAQ.
FAQ.
The actual FAQ website.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so the reason why it's so far away is because magic is a really content-heavy thing generally, and it all it all funnels back down into the combat segment of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion's still good. I'm just checking.
Yes, we have talked about magic in the Discord a fair bit. A big part of it for us is actually not treating it
as generically as magic. We plan to experiment with spell.
Am I not capable of reading?
No, you're not. You're like stuttering every other second.
Okay, so
I mean, you can continue. Go ahead.
Okay, we plan to experiment with spell slinging, alchemy, enchantments, and more. Some of these will be more magical, while others potentially may seem more grounded. Alchemy, for instance, may involve some more realistic chemistry aspects.
Yeah, so I'm gonna separate alchemy completely out of magic for the most part because I think
we're not going to talk about alchemy today.
I mean, we can talk a bit about it, but I think the way you can look at it is that magic is really going to feel like a completely different thing to how alchemy is going to.
But that's people. What this is saying is there's going to be there could be.
No, but I think even the types of magic that we're going to have
are going to have more similarities than alchemy.
Alchemy
is quite out there because it's not. Yeah, but we might have, for instance, staffs, or I don't know whether we'll do wands, but stuff like staffs or whatever that contain magic and let you unleash it. And that might actually be more based on the item itself rather than your personal magic skill. Maybe, I don't know. Whereas there might be other things which don't require any sort of instrument, but it's just your body expressing energy through motions or some gesture or something.
Yeah, there's a huge discussion there about how gesturing kind of works. Like, there's people talking about about spell casting by saying out spell cast names.
Yes.
So like fireball, and then people repeat fireball.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. I don't think we'll depend. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to depend on anything mic input based.
The mic input. It's surprising that microphone technology for games has not evolved at all. It's never there's not much. It's not really a peripheral that people can use to control or interface with the game, which is a bit unfortunate. But the most you can get out of it really is a decibel thing or a little bit of voice recognition, but it's never accurate enough, and it's more frustrating than it is ever good.
It also limits when you can play a game. If a game was completely based on audio and you need to speak at a speaking volume, you're not going to want to be playing it in your tiny little apartment with your 5 roommates at 2 a.m. Whereas if a game, only requires you to be punching holes in your walls, you're much more likely to be playing that at 2 a.m.
Or at a construction site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's the best place to play VR.
Yeah. Okay. So do we want to? Maybe we'll step through. Do we want to break these down now, like different concepts that we want to see, or do we want to?
So, I personally the reason we're so secretive about magic is because it ties a lot into a bit of lore in some aspects.
Yeah.
In terms of the origins of magic, what kind of people use them,
the types of energies.
Yeah, the types of energies. God, people are gonna freak about that.
I've read that document.
And that affects how we plan to do magic in the game, really.
Yeah.
And it does, and obviously that does encompass some more traditional concepts that you might be familiar with, like elemental magic, almost divine type magic, like necromancy, that sort of thing. And when we look at all these classes of magic, we want to really distinguish them separately as almost the same way we do professions with blacksmithing, woodcutting, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, we don't want the situation of here's your one spell book.
Yeah, here's your magic dude. He does all the magic.
Yeah, here's your spell book, and you flip to this page, and this page is fireball, and you toss out the page, and fireball goes flying, and next page, oh yeah, here's summon the undead, and next page, here's like heal everyone in an area. We might have a magic that is book based. We'll have to see.
Yeah, but it'll have like its own class of abilities.
It won't be everything. Like as Boramy said, necromancy is its kind of own concept. I feel like there's enough you can do with necromancy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of games that have done this well. A lot of games have separated the necromancer class from the priest class from the whatever other class, and I don't know whether it'll necessarily be that straightforward or like super class specific.
Yeah, no, it won't be super.
But they'll probably also have different ways of doing it.
Yeah, you'll definitely feel the way like obviously you'll feel a bit of like the archetype that I'm familiar with is kind of in this direction. Yeah. When we were thinking about Magic, we looked at a lot of traditional like RPGs and their classes and their magic and things like that. And generally when you have like a warrior class and like a hunter class and all that sort of thing, it almost feels like they have their own magic skills.
Because they've got their like the war cry. And...
Yeah, they've got like war cries and leaps and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it feels like that's the kind of like distinction that we want to take Magic to, where you're a warrior that has these kinds of mobility abilities.
But also the mage is busy going... Yeah. Whereas the warrior is going, ah! And it's very different to, like, the warrior is not doing, oh, I'm summoning my war cry. Like, it's a completely different realm of magic.
Yeah. And so we try and sort of, so we're trying to group these things up and so that you feel like there's a consistent theme, and obviously that's how things can tie into the world a lot better.
Yeah.
The impact of Magic for the game, I think I was saying a bit earlier before, the reason we don't do it now is because it all sort of goes back into combat. And combat right now is kind of just like there's a health pool and then there's a like stunning pool, like a stunning health bar.
Yes.
For the Turubatas only as well, actually. The Worms and the Guitaras and stuff don't have that yet.
Yeah. So, and there's also no world interactions. So you can't destroy a bridge to stop enemies from chasing you, or knock over a tree with force, or so. Like there's nothing that
there's no utility to the...
Yeah, the closest to a utility would arguably be there's vines or something, and you want to light it with a fireball so you can shoot a fireball. Fire is pretty much the only environmental interaction there is at this stage. So,
and we want Magic to have a pretty broad impact on the game, because it'll be, I think, a fairly like almost it'll dabble a bit in early game, but it's more into the mid game and end game where you'll really feel like you've become proficient at this stuff and you're able to do crazy things. We're still believers of the fresh townsperson coming in and being pretty much like a regular human being in this world.
Yeah, they're not casting fireballs on their second day.
Yeah. And then when you see someone who's like like day 3000 playing the game, that they're like this legendary hero, right? That's who we want to be as these characters. And I think going along the entire progression
small town
that's
legend, important. I think. The other thing is, just like any class, I think there will be aspects of not everyone's going to necessarily employ magic to the full extent. I like in my vision at least, there are some people who have tried to fully dabble in.
Sorry, I just disabled the previous to reduce the CPU drain a bit
and make it so we don't have to look at ourselves. Yeah. Now I don't know what I look like. So we. I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, I imagine if I've been playing for a while, I might be a lumberjack. That's my personal favorite sort of class. But and I'm like a layman folk in this town. Like I'm one of those people who goes by, does their job every day. I'm very good at my job, but I don't know any magic. Magic might be quite something that's quite difficult to get into, or if people do try and do it, it's kind of like a party trick sort of thing. Like, oh, I can create sparks with my hand, but it's a good skill that I've picked up, but it's far from casting fireballs, and it's not until you really get into it. And so someone who's a full-on spell slinger, for instance, they've had to train into this spell slinging thing. It's like they haven't been woodcutting, they haven't been mining, they've been slinging spells as their profession. It really is a profession, not just I'm a woodcutter, and by the way, fireballs and lightning storm, and let me summon the undead on the side. It's
I mean, I think obviously people want to do a lot of different things because that's kind of what makes the experience varied. So like you might end up being a woodcutter that is also a mage.
Hybrid.
Yeah. Like I think we almost want to have that distinction between your like being able to be half of like a professional task, and then the other half being your combative.
Right now you have like 8 skill points to spend. The way that those sort of things will happen in the future will most likely change as we add more skills into each tree and add more trees and add different types of progression. Like heart flowers aren't a skill point, they're a different type of progression. Can I summon a undead army to chop down trees for me?
That'd be cool.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if you'd have to,
especially if trees kill you. Now you've got this thing, you've got this undead army, but it's turned into a dodging game.
It'd be interesting if seeing what kind of synergy you can mix between professions and other skills, like maybe if you're a master woodcutter and you're a necromancer, you can create woodcutters for you. I don't know how we do that much. Like it sounds
cool. You summon the undead.
Yeah, you summon the undead.
And they usually start off with they're just skeletons that punch people or something. Yeah. But you can give them tools.
Oh, so you can give them tools.
You give them tools, and once they expire, like they like disintegrate to dust with the tool. And so next time they spawn,
they come back with
the tool. So you
So they kind of like your personal army. Yeah, that's cool. So I think on a moment-to-moment sort of thing with Magic, if you're like raiding a dungeon or a boss, we do want the sort of like having someone be your healer, someone your support, like buffing person, your tanks and all that sort of thing.
DPS.
Yeah. Like
AoE, FPS. Wait.
your dot attacks and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. Acronyms.
Like your crits, your crit monsters.
The ISBs.
Oh yeah. What's your
incorrectly spelled acronym?
Yeah. But that's kind of the fun of it. Is like, I think in the future, as we start to work on more endgame content, you're going to see things probably get a lot tougher on a stat requirement level, where this boss has so many things that you need to do to it that you doing on your own is going to be difficult.
And you need your friends.
Yeah, so you need people to be able to deal with certain unique aspects that boss has to kind of nullify to the point where you can't deal effective damage during these window periods.
But things like bosses and dungeons that really require specific stats or loadouts will be generally more something that you voluntarily enter. It's probably worth noting. Like you're not going to spontaneously
come across
something in the caves that suddenly just kills everyone without warning.
Like and I think for overworld, because I think it's still fun to deal with that sort of thing on non-bosses. Yeah, but I think you'll be in an area where that's kind of the rule set.
Yeah. Like you've entered a marshy land and now suddenly there's... I don't know why electricity and marshes came together for me, but suddenly there's a whole bunch of electrical...
I was thinking that electricity wouldn't work as well because of Pokemon, but...
Okay, well, I was imagining you're in a marsh.
I was thinking it's like sort of wet mud, and then you have to use fire attacks to solidify them, and then blunt weapons to smash them.
Smash them, yeah. That's a good example. Like mud creature, dry them, smash them, and that's pretty much the best way to kill them. And they might actually seem quite OP to players otherwise. And yes, maybe you could use your torch, but it's going to be much less efficient than someone who's got flaming arrows or got other things to try and kit themselves out for that sort of environment.
Yeah, and ideally, we like for those kind of conditions, we'll give you multiple ways to deal with it because that's kind of the creative fun, like being able to like splash like flammable oil on them to first mix in with them, and then throwing like your torch at them will actually ignite them, for example.
And you might be using explosives instead of like Tarabata shard arrows instead of a hammer or whatever. If you want to, if you're doing things remotely or spell enhancing your weapons or tools or arrows or whatever.
But yeah, and like Joel mentioned, you're not gonna come across like a horde of those kind of creatures somewhere that it's otherwise pretty normal to you to visit.
Yeah, you're not going to be fighting like Go-Terras and then have some completely irrelevant electrical boss energy thing that zaps you because you've got a metal weapon in your hand and suddenly you die. We're gonna have thematic changes, and you're also through things like the forest and the caves and dungeons, you're gonna have areas where you turn and you go, okay, I'm gonna backtrack now because that's not a safe area for me because of my loadout or whatever the case is, or I don't have enough friends with me or friends in general.
I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of like how to cast magic too much, because I think that's going to be quite experimental on our end to see what feels good.
We can let's talk about options.
So
as mentioned, it's going to be experimental. It's going to be something we're going to research. We're going to try out. We're going to be like, this sounded like a good idea when we did this Altacast number 5, or 4, but it turned out to be an awful idea. But for instance, something I'm a real big fan of, you should all at Boramy and tell them it's a great idea.
Fire hands.
Fire hands. For instance, this is exactly the point. Like, it sounds like a good idea to me. To Boramy, he's a bit sick of hearing it. But in practice, it might turn out to be an awful idea. Or in practice, Boramy might like try it for 2 seconds and be like, this is amazing. But here's an idea. If you just close your hand for 5 seconds while not holding anything, if your hands start heating up and eventually catch fire, like literally as if you put your hand in the forge, you're going to start taking damage over time. But that then lets me... I'm not sure if you can currently light a torch with your hand, can you?
I think you can.
You can? Yeah, that would allow me to...
I think, yeah.
But I might also have another spell, which is like if I do a punching motion while my hand is on fire, it casts a bit of a spell. And the hotter my hand is, the bigger that fireball or whatever. So if I stick my hand in the forge, I can then shoot like a huge fireball. But the downside is this type of fiery magic is something that deals damage to me because it requires myself to be on fire. But it also means if I have someone who can heal me enough, or I have other things to increase my health or keep me healing or whatever, like I could walk around the caves with my fist on fire rather than needing a torch or whatever. It's just one instance of a motion, in this case a punching motion and a keeping my hand closed motion that ties into fire rather than so that's more of a body-based motion rather than a tool-based motion. And as we mentioned, we could have tools like a staff that gets slammed into the ground or gets thrust towards an opponent, or
like I think some of the key things that we want is to make sure that there's enough skill and nuance in how you do it, that is something that you've mastered when you can really nail it, and it's not something that feels like it's really given to you for free.
We don't want we don't
really want it to be like hold your hand out and then press like a button,
and then it does 100 damage to that player, like flat damage. No, we want those things like to be skill based, to have a bit of timing, to have a bit of accuracy, and
it's a good way to make you do cool gestures to cast your spell, where you're sort of doing these huge swirls before you throw out your fire spell and things like that that add that like level of excitement. And so you're not really feeling like you're just kind of rapid firing fireballs, but that maybe you taking your time to perform this is more worth it than spamming light attacks.
And then we mentioned like books and pages. Maybe magic could incorporate a book, a spell book,
like
and pages in some way.
A grimoire.
We could go down the route of cards, of I'm just saying things. I'm not saying any of these are things we're even necessarily going to try out, but like there's so many different types of, you could have cards, you could have like sort of more alchemy or material based things, like you throw down this dust and then you create a spark and you end up with like a fire explosion, and it's more like that chemistry warfare than traditional magic could do. People have talked about gesture based stuff. There are clearly a big example is Orbis has the
sigil drawings.
The sigil drawings in the air. I don't know whether we'll experiment with that ourselves. I think generally we're bigger fans of like body motions than
drawing
small
motions. I think the main thing with that is we don't want you to repeatedly have to do that. Like just because it's such a precise thing that doesn't necessarily always have a very strong output.
Yeah.
Which I think is like part of the experience from playing Orbis personally was I felt like, I'm kind of doing this gesture 1,000 times.
It's the cool thing about it is I think it does grade it. It does grade it, and I think if we have anything like you have to do this series of poses or whatever, I think we'll have grading in that as well, as a way of going like you followed these gestures accurately, or you did a crap job following the gestures. But we really want, like as we mentioned, like with those mud creatures, to dry them up and then smash them. The way that we'll be addressing creature design and in general for those sorts of things, and the way we'll do magic in general, I think we'll disincentivize.
Decentivize.
Decentivize?
Instead of saying incentive.
Yeah, is it disincentivize?
No,
whatever. It'll not encourage you to do the same spell over and over again. Even like, and not just not encourage you, but you might actually be worse off spamming a spell than mixing up spells.
We kind of want to think of it as like it's a bit of a waste if you try and spam something. Like with an enemy encounter, for example, we want it to be like now's the moment of opportunity where you. Like, okay, mages fire, like shoot your fire, and then the fire takes it. But then there's no point in them continuing that for too long or continuing to spam too much. Now's the next phase of this particular encounter. So, maybe like, okay, swap to buffing the hammer guys so they can do this thing.
The big benefit of fire might be setting them on fire. Once they're on fire, hitting them with a fire arrow or a fireball that doesn't do much damage but sets them on fire is not adding much.
Yeah, I mean, it might be like a continuous fire stream might be better for this particular case to like perpetually increase the temperature.
Yeah.
But I think in combat, like those changes that people go through, like where they have to change their organization and setup is the most fun part, as opposed to like dragging out a single segment for too long. So that I think that's the direction we want to take tougher enemies, and until we get to that point where we've got
bosses, basically.
And we feel like the underlying thing is the underlying technology that creates the world is all there. Then I think we're going to start going in those directions where difficulty kind of goes in parallel, where you might have the best high-end gear for this particular path. And I think we talked a bit about parallel paths last Altacast, in terms of like branching difficulty into parallel directions as opposed to like always going down the singular.
You have different stats and different. This enemy might be really tanky, but it doesn't do much damage, and this enemy might be.
I mean, it's more like this enemy's really weak to like physical attacks.
Yeah.
And so if you have like your Valiant Greatsword, it's great, but then you have one that's like you need to have like a particular elemental magic to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the different zones I think in the game will treat themselves.
Yeah, it could be the fact that literally there's an area where, for whatever reason, the way you've set up, your town has set up themselves, they just can't sort of get through this area of the mountains, and so you've got someone who's been training themselves up to be able to do whatever is necessary to break through that part of the world, and it's actually. It will be a big thing for your town when you've had this challenge that you actually can't solve for a long time, and you've worked together to solve that problem, and then you break through, rather than, we can do everything up to levels, not that we have levels, but we can do everything up to level 30-ish sort of difficulty, and then now we can do everything up to level 35 difficulty. To be able to say, like, on my server, we had no problems tackling the lightning bats, and Boramy's like, yeah, we just can't do it. Like, we've all got decked out like Metal Gear, and I'm like, oh, you're using Metal Gear, that explains a lot. We're mostly like archers, and we've got a lot of leather, like weapons and slingshots and whatever.
I mean, it'd be interesting if, like, because obviously magic is one way that you guys can solve this problem, but if you have like, if we have tools that require you to make those tools that are a bit less efficient in dealing with them, like the lightning bats, for example. If like the town that has the metal armor, for example, they decide to carry like a lot of water potions that they throw at them to sort of like discharge the bats. And obviously that cost them like all the glass that they used to make the potions, all the water they collected.
Don't you know? I just have a big water like thing on my back.
Yeah, you bring
and I've got the hose attachment that lets me.
Yeah, we got the Luigi's Mansion, or we got the flood from Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah.
That'd be a sick backpack.
Oh man, you see someone across the cave about to die, and you shoot the teleport liquid, and they're like, ah!
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So
coming to Township Tale next week.
I guess one last sort of bit, and then I know it's been on people's mind, is the resource system for magic. Will we ever have mana? Is the big question. It is a good question, but I think because we have so much, we're planning to have all these diverse classes of magic, having mana that spans across all of them feels a bit, doesn't feel right, because we've tried to distinguish them so much. So you might see a different type of resource system that's unique for each of the magic systems.
Yeah, I agree.
And it might tie into some of the more global things. Like I can imagine like spells that you can use but that make you hungrier.
Or maybe there's spells which incorporate themselves into, if we do end up with one main mana stat, it could be the case that different things use that in different ways. Like there could be a realm of spells which you can only use if you're on full mana, and it depletes your mana entirely. And so your focus is on like mana regen, and you don't want to increase your mana cap. But if you specialize in that form of magic, you're going to be really crap at
magics that
actually use mana on this costs 20 mana, because you've deliberately kept your mana count
low.
And like that sort of thing. I don't know whether that's an example. Like that's something we've never talked about. It's just an example of how we can tie into a certain stat in different ways. Another classic is like the idea of like Vladimir in League of Legends consumes his health. But a lot of his spells are actually like life suctioning, life steal.
Life steal,
so those sort of things which don't necessarily. It is a bit interesting. One difficulty with having different types of manas would be, firstly, somehow communicating them, but also we don't really want you to be able to burst through all of this mana using magic type A and still have a full pool of magic B to burst through that other type of magic. Maybe that's actually fine, but like there's lots of things that we need to take into account. We're not against mana as we're not against the idea of a stat of energy behind the scenes that gets consumed and you regenerate. It's just, it might not be mana, that blue bar that appears above your head.
I think it would whatever stat thing we might come up with or resource thing, you'll see that it might vary a lot. And it kind of like the vampirism thing with Vlad from League of Legends. Some magics will like tie into completely different parts of your character stats and what you can do. Like there might be something that like depletes your your strength and ability to do physical hits, and that's an invisible stat, kind of like the damage ability that you have. And that could tie into where you like exhaust yourself to do this magic type. So seeing these kinds of like more interesting ways to resource out the magic is how we're gonna go with that.
So hopefully, I think we're done with magic. Hopefully this hopefully this answers the question a little bit for people who have been asking about magic. I've seen it pop up a couple times in the Discord just in the past few days. So the answer is yes, there will be magic, and a lot of people have asked what types of magic, and we've covered that. There's we've talked about necromancy, we've talked about
we've talked about like elemental, like we talked about some more like physical warrior type magics. I think.
Sorry, I'm gonna something. I'm gonna mute my.
Are you Discord spamming?
Mantax.
Mantax
You're disrupting our outcast. Okay. So yes, there is going to be magic. We're going to explore all these different things. We're going to explore different resources, different invocation systems, different realms of magic,
and different effects on the environment and enemies, and so it's this whole new spectrum of content, and
nothing's really off the table.
Decision,
Some people have been like, oh, maybe the world of Township Tale is not really a world with magic. No, it's 100% a world of magic. It's like the lore is literally like it's riddled with magic.
It's a lot about magic. That's the piece of lore you get, is that magic is very important to this world.
The big problem, as Boramy mentioned, is just that magic is so content based. It's like enemies in a sense, where you work on one enemy, then you work on another enemy, and likewise. And some things may cross over, but it's a lot of manual work for each thing we add. Whereas when we add in a system like carpentry, to make it so that you can now chisel a new thing, it's like 5 minutes, not even, of work to go, okay, when this combo is done, spawn this prefab. Like that's literally all we need to do. So it's so what we're trying to do is make those more system-y things, and even the new crafting system, it's a bit more work than chiseling, but it allows us it unlocks a whole realm of content rather than, and making a new backpack is a lot less work than making a whole new spell or a whole new enemy. But
now making backpacks is really easy, as you saw with the addition of the new backpack last update. Okay, we're going to move on to the question segment. So thanks to everyone for putting in your questions. We're going to try and answer as many of them as we can once Joel brings up the link after he reads Mantax's message.
Sorry. Okay, so... Oh, crap. Oh, no, crap. I lost it.
What have you done?
No, here it is. Okay.
All right. We can start with the top question.
Okay.
Any notes on armor smithing? I think we've answered that in the previous Altacast. The basic answer is we want more tough enemies and more challenges for you guys before we put in armor crafting, because we know you guys are going to beeline towards like having Valiant armor.
We would rather have enemies that you guys find practically impossible, and then someone triumphs over it, and then we slowly like wane in armor that makes that more realistic, than giving you all armor and enough time for you to all have like the best armor in the game. And then when we try and release enemies that are reasonably challenging, you're all like, we're fully decked out with the best armor ever. We can easily take on these enemies. Like there's always going to like, it's not really I guess it is actually at the end of the day. It's like a power creep. It's the idea that you start off a game weak and your enemies are going to be weak. And over the course of the game, you're going to be against stronger threats, but you're going to be stronger yourself. And at this stage, we'd rather actually start exploring the threat side of the scales rather than focusing on the buffing you side of the scales. We know it feels great to be strong and powerful and defeat everything easily, but it feels better to actually have a challenge that you overcome. So I think right now mythical Churubatas are probably the toughest enemies, but they're kind of like we don't want you to give you armor just so that you can tank their hits. We'd like for you to try and fight better against it, I guess, like using shields and stuff like that. It's really hard to use a shield against them, I know, because they're so huge. So maybe you'll see tweaks to that. But that's kind of our thinking behind it. On that note, I know some people are kind of like, oh, they spin too fast or whatever, like different bugs with them. we'd rather fix the bugs than put in armor. Like we'd rather we're not going to put in features
to combat some of the
bugs.
Combat some of the issues with it.
Just question here about combat desync before whether we're fixing it before the end of the year. I'm going to say no, very unlikely, just because we're at the end of the year already.
Yeah, and schedule's booked out. So no.
But when is it going to be done? I would like to explore it early next year, because I do think it's a serious issue for PvP players. Obviously not for everyone, but I think there's enough PvP players for it to be a big concern.
We have some ideas design-wise on how it can be addressed, so we need to see how those work, and that'll determine whether or not they go through.
Oh, I like this question.
Scars and other facial customization. We do want a lot more customization options for your characters. We
will have scars.
Yeah, I think we'll have scars. There's a bit on some technical things about how we can let you have features that are on the left side of your arm, on the right side of your arm, on your face, on your body, torso, and back. How you can choose those different components, because our characters, your skin is a single mesh, and a single part. So we got to figure out how we're gonna imprint on the texture. These sort of things. Yeah. But this, that's a bag. The sash that you're wearing is something that we want to customize as well. If you're a supporter, you've seen some early experiments with that.
Way back.
Early in the supporter days.
You'll have to scroll all the way to the top.
The reason why we're not doing those yet is because, the tech of customizing your character is kind of there, and it's proven to work. So we kind of want to move on with some of the other aspects of the game. Me and Serena almost spent 6 months doing customization, and obviously we needed to do it because we need to be a business and make money, and because otherwise the game wouldn't exist, we'd be shutting down. But we also know some people were why have you, this year when we released it, they were like, you've spent all year doing this. We would have much rather seen house building or forest. House building in the forest were never going to come if cosmetics never came. But we did get the point. We didn't want to spend the whole year doing cosmetics. We wanted to get stuff like the Tarabata and the new crafting system, some of the big mechanics that we've added this year out. Yeah, I mean, it's probably why 2019 looked a bit like a quality of life year almost. It's because we, like Joel and Serena were working on this. Timo was working a bit on the database side of this, of things for this as well.
Yeah, so it's over half the development team. Yeah. For almost 6 months, just taken up.
And that's kind of also why you're seeing us pick up a bit more momentum with content and things like that now, is because we've freed that. Joel was also working on the launcher for a long time.
Yeah.
So now we're finally starting to work on that.
Yeah. I don't 100%, I 90% get what this question is asking. New supporter cosmetics when? I assume the question is when will we have something supporter exclusive? It's not off the table. It's actually not something that it's not like it's on our calendar. Coming up in 6 weeks is the next supporter. We did do that free for everyone shirt, and that was just kind of...
That was a bit more experimental, I think.
Yeah, we just wanted to see what would happen. How many people would buy it?
How many people would buy it? Whether or not it would get people more interested in the store. In terms of something that, and this goes a bit into the next question, which is whether or not new supporter perks are currently in the making. We've had meetings and talked about supporter perks for that you're given over the duration of your supporting time. So if you supported 3 months, you get this. 6 months, you get that. 12 months, you get that. That is probably going to come in at some point, but there's no timeline for it. Right now, we're kind of our mindset shifted a lot into the gameplay side of things at the moment. When new supporter perks and things like that come back into play, we'll get a better idea once we're further ahead in what we're currently doing.
Yeah. At this stage, at this stage, from our perspective, support is already a really good deal. Just because you're getting the $10, you're getting the $10 in the store value straight away from your $10 subscription, and then you get all the perks on top of that.
Yeah, you get the supporter levels as well.
It's not that we're against making new perks, as Boramy mentioned. We'll add new ones, but at this stage, I don't know if the person is asking this question because they're like, "Oh, support is not worth it," or because they're just curious to see more. We definitely want to see more. We want to add as much value to supporter as possible. But we think it's got a...
And we don't really want it to detract too much from the line of what is going to go into the game. So, like with the climbing level, for example, that supporters are currently going through, again, touched on this a little bit, but basically the timeline for that evolving is going to be, like, as we want to move this climbing thing into the main game, we're going to start, that's the direction you're going to see climbing evolve, and people will be able to preview that in their supporter level. So eventually, there is the angle that climbing will be in the main game from that being a preview.
Ideas for magic, as in what you guys have thought up or really like that is...
Nope, no idea whatsoever.
Yeah, we should start thinking on that.
Hopefully for people who are curious about this question, hopefully we touched on those subjects.
Outfit presets when? Good flipping question.
Yeah, when, Joel?
Outfit presets... I think an amazing idea. I think it's actually so. In our original design of cosmetics, we have all the different cosmetic slots and clothing items, which is already in there, as well as stuff like skin color and body shape and stuff. And we went from two body shapes to 12. 8? I think there's a lot of body shapes.
Maybe 12.
So we got that out. But then I would say the three big things we didn't get out was the idea of presets, so that you could save your character, go to another server, and quickly apply that character rather than having to recreate from scratch. The second was history, to be able to undo and redo things, which I briefly worked on, but then
it kind of broke.
Something about it was broken, so I was just like, screw that. I'm moving on. I don't have time. And then the third one was...
was it asymmetry?
Asymmetry.
Yeah.
There's actually two more things. There's scars and tattoos. And the sash. But the sash... Like, we always knew that the sash was going to be a big separate thing. Because it's not just going to be like, buy a sash in the store. It's going to be...
It's going to be like the graphic that displays on it, the kind of borders, the backgrounds...
Once again, if you want examples, support us with.
We kind of want to treat it like we really like the banners in Diablo 3. We kind of want to treat them like that.
Yes, and then it could tie into
like actual banners,
like banners
for your guild, and things like that. More craftables using this new system.
Nah, we're done. we think 4 craftable items is enough.
I think there's like 10 maybe.
For real?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
maybe 9,
if you count the side pouches and hoops and stuff.
Definitely you count those.
But they tie into the backpack. In my head, there's like the big backpack, the little backpack, and the lanterns.
The little hooks is like a game changer for having like large tools on your back.
It's true.
We definitely want more craftables. It's just a matter of wanting to them, finding an item that has a place, making sure that the costs are all good and make sense.
If you have an idea that uses existing resources, doesn't require anything new, feel free to create a thing in the ideas on the feedback forum. Get some upvotes so that it comes to our attention. And then, like, we do read through them all, obviously, but it's just, sometimes it's hard to gauge how interested people are. But if you can get people to upvote it, then we can be like, damn, lots of people want this thing. Let's seriously sort of consider it. Okay. Mobs
that can use weapons and items.
Yes.
So those are the toughest mobs to make because they're very real. Like they have to interact with a lot of things.
They have to be able to know how to maybe block or dodge your attacks and how to attack someone of different heights. And
so you're seeing us move a little bit in that direction with the way Turabatas kind of fight. like they block different sides, and we're starting to be able to recognize where and what you're doing in some ways. But we're probably going to be working on some other creatures before we see an enemy like that, primarily because they need to be quite intelligent. They need to recognize like objects. They need to move pretty well, interact with each other in some interesting ways.
Yeah, we've had one 3D modeled for quite a while.
Yeah.
And we've got concept art for a few more. But like it was modeled before the Tarabata or the Phantom were started work on. So they're...
And that's kind of when we realized, like, this is, like, even before we tried to program anything like that, and, I was starting work on animations, we saw it and we were like, okay, this requires a lot of technical work with how they behave.
Yeah.
Let's edge our way towards it so that we can up our skill and learn new things and still provide meaningful content without putting us in this hole of, like, here's this, 1 year long task of creating these AIs. Let's start it right now, and then we come across all these problems that we can't deal with, and then if something gets scrapped, we just wasted a lot of time. Yeah,
the whole AI system, it's still a work in progress. I actually think the Shmichis are still using our original AI system which we used for the worm and for the Spriggle before we rewrote it and then moved the Spriggle and worm across to the new system. Yeah. So the Shmichi is still in the old system, but even then, if you look at if we look at the tech behind the worm one and compare that to the Tarabata one, there's a lot more tools and scripts and stuff that we've added over time that make the worm one look quite primitive in terms of setup, like overcomplicated. So we're actually improving the whole system. Yeah. So it's a bit of a weird concept that you imagine you make a game, you're not going to instantly be good at the game just because you made it. Same goes with tools. We might have made these tools, but that doesn't mean we're the best at using them yet. We're still learning different ways that we can better use these tools and therefore more quickly and more interestingly create AIs. Any plans on hiring more people to work on the game? At this stage, where we do get interns in, we've got one art intern right now, and we always just try and gauge where they're at, how well they fit into the team, whether they're someone we'd like to onboard permanently. We're not trying to, we haven't put out job applications for a senior programmer or anything like that because we can't afford it at this stage. So we're keeping the team size small, and we all have a completely unique shared vision on the game. We're not and one problem with rapidly growing is you end up with lots of people who internally conflict.
If you go too fast, there's a bit of detachment to the project, just because this just you hire 6 new people, and these 6 new people work together a lot, and none of them have we're there seeing all the struggles, and so the passion, the type of passion that develops is quite different.
Yeah.
But we do want to grow the team eventually, obviously, because we want to speed up the rate at which we do things.
At this stage, slower growth,
but fairly, yeah. Any place? Yep.
More cooking than throwing things in a pot.
We like things like baking and grilling. I think we talked about that last Altacast as well. The main actually having to mix things is something I want to experiment. Right now, cooking has no real hand interactions. You kind of just put things, leave it, and then take it out. So seeing how we can implement a more hands-on approach to it, because that's part of the issue we had when we were coming up with skills. Is cooking is too hands-off. How can we create a skill based off of you just dumping something in a pot? And that'll but more cooking will mainly come out of necessity. So you're not I think we're probably not gonna have any more stews for a while, because we'll experiment. We want to commit ourselves to creating a new, more intricate form of cooking for more complex behaviors.
And they'll probably tie into each other. I'm not sure if you said that. I was reading this, but stuff we roast and then you stew stuff. Likewise, you might.
Yeah.
Animals? Question mark.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we want animals.
Come on, we had 1 word question, 1 word answer.
Both made up ones and both real ones. That's it.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
What was this?
I think last Altacast we might have mentioned a rare metal. Oh, maybe talking about a quest. We said that like you have to go on a quest to get a rare metal or something.
So basically, it could have unique properties with how it reacts to like heat or like electricity or specific elemental things.
Yeah, tying it to magic. If you're like, I really want metal because metal is stronger than my wooden club, but I am going into an electricity area. Maybe I can get this really expensive metal, which has pretty much no conductivity, so it's safe against these electrical creatures. Maybe it's something that retains heat, or there's just lots of different properties that either exist in the game right now and we could play with, like heat or damage or durability or whatever, or maybe it could tie into a stat that doesn't exist yet, like electrical conductivity, or
How about a sword that's like
glows when orcs are near?
No, or like it's like negative. It's like negative where when you swing it, you go with it.
If we see any new mobs with the forest, will they be hostile or passive? Yes, they'll be both. I was
thinking bandits or wild folk could be interesting, so long as they have unique looks to ID them. More very human things like that, you're probably not going to see. You're mainly going to see creatures and animals. And then you're going to see things where you don't know which one is which, and then you have to take a gamble on your moral ethics as to whether you kill it or fight it.
Oh, like a creature that might be aggressive or
a creature that might
to see you.
Yeah.
On that note, we'll probably try and find ways that we can give more characteristics to different creatures.
Just have a look at this. Still functions decently.
Yeah, and that the recording hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
So for instance, and that could even incorporate itself into something like a worm, which might be more aggressive, or you might have one which like gets hurt a little bit and then it like digs away and it's like, nope, like I'm out of here. We might see different sort of fighting styles. Will you be able to make a metal bow with a new crafting system?
That's a tough one. Probably. I think we'll have to. So we're about to work on some, like with the forest and things like that. We're introducing some new types of wood. A part of that is us wanting to address archery in some way with how that might work. So that different woods, affect like the bow tension and things like that, which will let us create some more variety for bows. But when it comes to metal bows specifically, like we kind of don't want to distract too much from the wooden types. So we'll see what kind of unique properties we can give metal bows, and what having a valiant bow is actually going to mean. That can be different from having like one of the best timber-made bows.
Making shovels, yes.
Yeah, making shovels. Yeah.
We'll be able to.
We'll be able to make shovels.
Yeah. Will there be musical instruments? I feel like we talked about this.
Yeah, we did. Check out if you asked about bard stuff and music. Check out the last Altacast. I think we have timestamps for it.
Crossover though, will music ever tie into magic? Maybe something we could explore, but it's not something that we actually haven't talked about that much at all, if at all, internally.
What is to be done about bones? They're everywhere in our blight on our fair town.
What is to be done about bones? Well, okay, so if you reach over and you pull the trigger on your controller, it'll actually snap the bone to your hand, and then you put it into your belt by releasing your trigger while the bone is over a dock, and then you do that over and over again, and then there's actually no bones lying around town.
Bones are gonna have a feature, some features. Maybe even with the crafting stuff.
Yeah, I imagine like if we look at classic Minecraft bone meal, maybe it will tie into
like into farming.
Farming at some stage, or
like
it could even tie into cooking with broth.
With broth stocks. Yeah. Could be a new garnish we can add.
Refining. The question is effectively, why does Valiant suck at hammering in the new crafting system? Because it feels bad that gold is the best for hammering. Well, in the new crafting system, presumably.
Yeah. So that's pretty much intended. Is this kind of behavior where you we're having the highest dealing thing is going to deal the highest damage thing to the materials you're working with. The thing that is kind of counteracted by that is the material type you're choosing to make can be harder to nail down, and that's when you
might want to get
want a stronger hammer. Yeah. So I think right now crafting a Valiant item is still a bit too sensitive to being nailed down by a Valiant hammer. So there's some minor tweaks there, but you will generally see this kind of it's almost, actually, to be honest, that's almost intended. Part of
it, I think part of the problem, I don't want to say you're the problem, but part of the problem is this mindset of Valiant is the best thing. It's this, and we've kind of encouraged that to some extent. We've kind of been well, in the game, what's your general goal? It's to get Valiant gear at this stage. We actually want to be moving away from that mindset. We want that mindset of, let me find the best gear for this situation. And part of what's going to make someone who hangs around that crafting building really, really good at crafting is the fact that they might off to the side have a hammer, 3 different hammers, for instance, and then they might start assembling something, and they might actually go, okay, so you say you want a Valiant base to this, but you want gold, silver or gold buckles or whatever on it, and they're going to know, okay, when I'm doing Valiant, I'm going to grab this hammer and I'm going to hit it around this hard because that's the most efficient way to do it and less likely to break the nail. Yeah. But now I'm putting on these gold buckles, I'm going to swap to this smaller hammer and I can pretty much whack it as hard as I want because the nails never break with gold, but I also don't need to do heaps of damage, so I can use this other hammer or whatever. They've learnt these intricacies rather than it simply being a thing of, anyone can craft. I'm the best crafter in the world because I simply own the strongest hammer. Bam, bam, bam. There's no skill in that anymore. It's literally just a gear game, but we want there to be skill and knowledge and practice and tweaking and changing and sort of working out what works best.
Any features, locations, or ideas you personally love to see for house building? You don't want to talk about that?
No. In my head, I was going to skip that question, and then you started reading it out, but I didn't.
Okay,
I forgot that you can't read it if I hide it.
So basically, just to answer that one quickly, we have a bunch of ideas for house building. Again, it's not that on the roadmap, but we like it to be pretty procedural in how it gets created, so that it's lighter on our asset side and gives you a bit more freedom. I think Joel mentioned previously in the past on his personal streams and on Discord that it is going to be plot based, and so we might experiment what we can do with plot locations, making some in rocky areas, some near waterfall, just whatever we can think of that is nice, and and see how it all plays out.
The reason I skipped it is because I think maybe I don't know when, but I think we'll do an Altacast on it at some stage. Probably not soon. Who knows? We're really winging these things, but it could if it's not in development. The problem is if we talk about it now, people are going to get super hyped, and then it's not coming out in the next couple months, or we'll have to see. But on the flip side, if people really want to hear about it, then maybe it is something that we talk about soon. Magic is going to come out after house building, I imagine, in terms of the roadmap. But we're talking about it now because lots of people have been asking about it.
Will support be able to spawn in climbing prefabs to make custom climbing courses before climbing is out? No, not before climbing is out at the very least. Yep.
When will we be able to mute other people talking in game? Some people are really bad singers.
Sorry,
you wanted instruments. It's called your vocal cords. I think muting other people in game will be an interesting thing. Something else I'd like to actually see is potentially, if you're showing someone's name, potentially showing like a speaking icon or something. So maybe if you do have someone muted, maybe above their head it shows a little muted icon that flashes red when they are talking or something.
Yeah.
One actual like legitimate thing that I'm not... the thing is, we're not using our own voice technology, but I'm pretty sure the system we're using supports muting other players.
Yeah, surely. Yeah, I'm sure it does. You'll probably see something come in when we have a nice way to interface with the concept of players around you. That's the main thing that's holding us back on that.
Just a quick question about whether we'll support LAN play. Probably not for a long time, if ever. Our focus is 100% on creating the online game of A Township Tale. We know that is we know that does kind of stop some people from enjoying the game exactly how they want to enjoy it, but there's lots of reasons for that. I can talk about them more. You can ask me if you want. Like, the short of it is, like, it is an online game fundamentally through and through. Stuff like updates, the store, everything runs through our data, our cloud infrastructure.
For this particular person who asked this question, you and your group of friends want to play together and have your own little town. You can totally do that right now. Right now we only have the server for supporters, private service for supporters. But if you become a supporter, you can start up your own server. You can invite whoever you want to that exclusively. And then we'll host that server, so any of your friends can join without you having to boot it up yourself. But then you can have the same experience of you and your friends playing together.
Yeah, I've just realized it said single player or local LAN. So yes, you can do single player as well. You can create your own server and jump on it by yourself.
And like
it'll just be you on the server.
Yeah.
Like it's not traditional single player. It's still like a server client relationship. But if you're the only, you choose who you invite to your server. You can choose who you give permissions to, who you kick or ban, or like, it's literally your server. It's as if you're hosting it yourself. Really. Yeah.
All right. That's every question.
That is.
We cleared out the Q&A. All right. That's it.
That's it.
It's an hour and 12 minutes.
Hour and 12.
Thanks all for watching.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time. This is obviously a bit strange format, no editing whatsoever, so it's just going to cut abruptly. If there's video stuttering, I apologize. I couldn't figure out how to solve this thing. If the video does stutter, I think it might just be my computer capping out on long recordings, but yeah. Maybe once we get better gear, we'll try something better. All right.
Thank you
Thanks
for
a lot.
watching.
Bye-bye.